everybody. Thank you for joining us for our very first conversations with the Women's Commission. My name is Karen Blackburn. I'm the chair of the Melrose Women's Commission, and we are excited to be here today. I'm going to be joined by our fellow commissioners today, and we are going to embark on what will hopefully be an engaging and thoughtful conversation with our mayor. Mayor Grigoritis, thank you so much for being our inaugural guest and for taking this chance with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. And so, again, this is really just a conversation for us to learn a little bit about what your vision is for the work that we're doing, that we're trying to do in partnership with you and the administration. And with that, I will kick off with the first question. How do you want to use your role and platform to better assist, help, and/or promote women in the community?
Thank you for that question. I think as the first elected female mayor, I recognize that that comes with some barrier breaking and that there's significance in that. And I was really excited to be part of an option for all women candidates for the first time ever in the history of Melrose, which I think was fantastic. So I think it's really to think about how do issues at the local level uniquely impact women. And I think one that I think is important is participation in public life. So you all, in addition to your very full personal and professional lives, are serving on a board and commission. Thank you for doing that. And we really want to think about how do we make things like boards and commissions accessible to people, particularly who can often find themselves, like many women do, in a caretaking role, either for older relatives or for young children. And that's why things like remote participation in meetings, having the ability to have meetings that are both in person and have an online option was important to me as a counselor, and is something that continues to be important to me, to really think about how are we making the mechanisms of government equally accessible to all. And I think that women in particular face some additional challenges, a lot of which was really highlighted during the pandemic.
That's great, thank you. Before I pass it on to my fellow commissioner, have you seen an uptick or an increase in women being appointed to boards and commissions?
We are definitely working on it. So it's one of the things, I'm about 6 months into the first year. We're certainly aware of needing to make sure that our boards and commissions are fully staffed, and we've been kind of trying to make our way through. So yes, we have definitely seen an increase. I really want to prioritize, to the extent possible, that our commissions reflect our community in terms of gender, age, race, socioeconomic status, that we want those groups to be reflective of who they're representing. I definitely encourage people who are interested in serving to reach out to my office. They can email mayorsoffice@cityofmelrose.org. It's been wonderful to hear from residents I've never met before who just have a genuine interest in serving their communities. So I really would like to get us to a point where all of our boards and commissions look like our community.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Mayor. I'm Commissioner Allie Goldberg, and touching upon what you were just saying with how some of the adults in our community can be more involved in boards and commissions, as my fellow commissioners and I are doing right now, would love to hear what are your aspirations for our younger generation, young girls in particular in our community. What would you like them to know? What wisdom can you share with them?
Wisdom. I think, I'll speak for myself. I, as a young woman, as a middle-aged woman now, I think I can have an instinct of, I'm not sure it's going to be perfect, so maybe I shouldn't do it, or I shouldn't try it, because what if I fail? What if I don't make it happen? And I think that's something that can be seen in many young women and girls. And so I really just want to try to have, my wisdom would be it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to put yourself out there and not have it happen. You can dust yourself off and try again, but we want your voice to be a part of the mix. That we are richer and better when we have everyone speaking up. So that would be my wisdom, if there's such a thing. I think in terms of engaging our younger people, obviously, I tried earlier this summer to increase funding for our schools through an override. That wasn't successful. I think we continue to need to prioritize education. It's one of the most important things we do as a community, is educate our young people, and we know it's going to have some of the biggest impact on our lives and theirs. And I really want to be as engaged as I can be with young people. I've had the opportunity to go a couple times to the high school and speak with students. And this past spring, we held our first ever 8th grade Civics Day, which was absolutely fantastic. We had the entire 8th grade, both boys and girls and non-binary, there to participate, and the students performed skits and songs that they had put together about what they had learned about different parts of government and civic life, and it was just one of the most inspiring things I've seen. It was a great opportunity for city staff to get to talk with students, and I hope make them feel connected to their government. So I would really like to continue to provide and participate in opportunities like that.
Well, that's so great. I would definitely appreciate getting in the schools, and I'm sure the students themselves being able to put faces and job responsibility to some of what they're learning.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of women in leadership roles at the city. We have the first ever, I believe, for the city of Melrose, female CFO. We have a female city solicitor. We have many department heads, including DPW, planning, and parks, that are all led by women. So I think we're also just providing an example of what leadership roles there can be for women if they think about a future in government.
Amazing. So moving on, thinking about government, I know a lot of us are thinking right now with the year that it is, the elections coming up this fall, there are federal elections in addition to, what may be on people's local ballots. But would love to hear from you, what are the issues you see as impacting women in the upcoming election this fall, and why is it important for women in particular to use their voice, their ballot, and vote?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the most obvious and most critical issue for women is access to reproductive health care, and we are seeing that being threatened across the country. I'm incredibly grateful to live in Massachusetts and to have the incredible female leadership that we do right now that is working really hard to protect our rights and our ability to access that care. And I think that is something that needs to be at the forefront of everyone's mind as we think about what's at stake in November. I know my own personal journey to motherhood would not have been possible without a variety of medical interventions that are no longer available to many, many women across this country, and that's a really scary thought. So I think that is something that we need to not shy away from talking about at every level. It is a local issue. It impacts 50% of our population in this community, so it is not just something that happens in DC or in places far away from us. So I think that's critical. And I think women need to vote. We have been a pivotal block in elections, and I think we need people to turn out and really, tell us what they want to see. So I would just encourage everyone to get out and vote. We have an incredible female city clerk and an election staff actually led by women, and so we want to make sure that people know how to vote, know their options, and take advantage of those.
Lovely. Yeah, so speaking of local issues, tying this back to voting, you referenced this a few minutes ago. I want to pick your brain on the recent override vote.
Sure.
And what your take is on the recent vote and what the impact of the no decision you think is going to be on the community.
Yeah, so I think the voters were really clear in telling us what they wanted to see. I think it was important to make that ask of people before we, as elected officials, went ahead and made decisions that are going to have all sorts of impacts on the delivery of services for so many residents. So, people were not willing to raise taxes. I think there's a variety of reasons for that. I think you could probably talk to 10 people and get 10 different answers. I respect that decision, even though it may not be the one that I personally voted for or agree with. But I think the impacts are going to be real. I mean, we're about 3 weeks in at this point to the new fiscal year for the city, and we are already having really challenging conversations at City Hall about, is dollar amount as small as $13,000? Where is that money going to come from to address this unanticipated cost, or this cost that came in higher than we thought for a whole bunch of reasons that are beyond our control? So it's going to be a very real part of governing for the administration, the city council, the school committee. It's going to be a very real part of delivery of services for our educators, our frontline personnel at DPW, police, fire. So I think we're going to feel it in the decisions that we make, and I think residents are going to feel it in the things that sometimes they're told aren't going to happen, because we have to prioritize, the most critical services ahead of the things that I think people find to be nice to have and also really valuable and enhancing of their experience in Melrose.
Oh, yes. Well, we appreciate that as the leader of our community. There's definitely some hard decisions that have to be made with the resources we have. So look forward to working with you on helping to shape some of those decisions.
Thank you, absolutely.
I have a quick follow-up.
Yes.
One of the things that I've appreciated about your administration is the transparency. So we were talking earlier that you have a show that you do regularly, and so that you could tell the community and the constituents what's going on. In light of the override vote, in addition to people feeling the effects of the decision, is there going to be a way for you and your administration to continue the transparency and to talk about what's going on, where the cuts are, where the choices are being made?
Absolutely, and I think something that we've tried really hard to do and are always looking to do better is how do we get information out to residents. We're a community of 30,000 people. We have one weekly newspaper. We have great resources like MMTV. It costs about $10,000 to mail the entire city, so that's not something I think as much as folks would like to get a weekly printed newsletter in their mail, that's viable for us. So we're trying to use all the levers that we have available to us to communicate: MMTV, the newspaper, the city news, Everbridge, things that people can sign up for. But I know oftentimes people feel like they don't know what's happening. We will continue to use all of those things, not just to talk about what has happened, but what we see coming, and when we feel like there are critical opportunities for the community to share their voice and their opinion. We're always in budget mode, so as I said, we're 3 weeks into the new budget. We will begin in earnest planning for the next fiscal year, probably in September. So we'll want to make sure that we're proactively sharing that information with the community. We're hoping to do office hours where I can just have a chance to talk with interested residents, and also to do some broader conversations around, what does budgeting look like? What is our revenue picture? Really what is left on the table as we make these decisions. The other place where I would encourage people to engage is city council meetings. I know it's not always what people want to do on a Monday night, but those folks work really hard, and that is where we are having some really robust and at times challenging conversations about what does it look like to have to make decisions that feel really unpalatable because there's only so much money to go around. So I think that's another opportunity for the public to see us in action, hear some of those conversations, and also to tell us what they think. So,
fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to hand it off now to a few of our fellow commission members to keep the conversation going.
Great, thank you both.
Okay, great. So we really appreciate the reflections from the first 6 months of your administration. And I'm curious, flashing back, if there's anything that, as the first female elected mayor in Melrose, that surprised you about your transition into office?
First thing that surprised me. I think I don't know if it was a surprise, but really pleasant experience was just how helpful and welcoming folks were, both at City Hall and in the community. I had an opportunity probably in March to take my son to the Olivia Rodrigo concert, and when we were walking through North Station, a gentleman flagged me down and said, "I'm so-and-so, and I live in Melrose," and I didn't know him. It was really nice to meet him, and he said, "You're our mayor," and he turned to his friend and said, "She's the first female elected mayor in my community," and he was clearly really proud of that. And I think it doesn't matter who he voted for, I have no idea, but just I think to kind of see that sense of we did something new and exciting, and to kind of help feel his pride, and that was really, really nice. So people have been incredibly kind. I live in the community, so I'm in line with people at the grocery store. I see people when I'm at Fred Green watching my son play football, and people have just been very gracious, and I really appreciate that. I think one thing that was sort of surprising is just a reminder of kind of how much farther we have to go in Melrose and in all sorts of communities in terms of really achieving government that looks like our community. I went to a meeting early on in my tenure, and I was the only woman in the room of about 15 people, and it was clear within 3 seconds of walking in that several of the other members thought I was a staffer, and I was like, no, I'm actually the mayor. So I think it was just a little bit of a kind of reminder that there's a lot of folks who just are sort of expecting a certain person to show up, and then when it's not that person, it takes them a moment. So, but it's overall been just a really lovely transition, and I really appreciate the kindness that people have showed me and my family.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll pass it over to you, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us. I'm Elizabeth Reedy, one of the commissioners here. And you touched upon this, and I know that you've met a number of people in Melrose. But for people that haven't met you yet, what do you hope they take away from their first interaction with you?
I hope they take away that I'm a resident just like them. You know, I'm sending my kids to school. I'm figuring out where to put my new trash barrel. You know, I'm worried about, you know, the impacts of climate change and, you know, whether or not my kids are getting into trouble when they're downtown, just like everybody else is. You know, I'm living the experience along with you, and so I take that with me. And I also hope they come across how much I really care about this community and how fortunate I feel to get to live here and to have the opportunity to lead it. It's really, I think, the best job I've ever had, and I feel really lucky every day to get to go to work.
That's wonderful to hear. You don't hear that from many people. And so since you are a resident of this community and you have been here for some time, we'd love to know what your favorite spot in Melrose is, or a hidden gem, or some place that you like to go that other people might not know about.
Well, it's only 4 square miles, so I don't know how many hidden gems there are. I mean, I guess I would say kind of my regular haunts. You can find me at downtown getting coffee at Starbucks most mornings before 6 a.m. and I really enjoy the crowd of folks that I see there. But I think one of my kind of just favorite spots in Melrose is the common playground, and I say that because when we moved here and our kids were so little, I just could not believe that a playground like that where my kids could figure out how to ride a bike and I could meet other parents was 2 blocks from my house, that I could walk up there and just to have that experience. And it was really one of the first senses of community I got here, so it's always been kind of special. And while my kids are out of the playground stage, we get to, you know, I walk my dog up there a lot, and it's just, it's so picturesque just to be up there. And I think it's this feeling of the community right there. You know, there's kids playing, there's adults playing basketball, there's people tending to their yards and their homes, and it just is it's amazing to get to have that sense of interwoven connectedness, and yet we're only 7 miles from downtown Boston. So I would say the Common.
Well, that's wonderful. That was the first playground I ever went to in Melrose, too.
It's pretty
great.
great.
It brings people together. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Mayor Grigoritis. We really appreciate you having a conversation with us, and we could learn more about you and have a chance to speak with you about your vision for Melrose and the future of Melrose as you see it. Again, we're the Melrose Commission for Women, and we are looking for new commissioners. So if you are interested, please feel free to reach out to womenscommission@cityofmelrose.org. We have monthly meetings, usually held on the 3rd Monday. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us or to the mayor's office.
Yes, and thank you for what you do. We so appreciate it.
Of course.